You're 30. You're close to it. You've been working for about a decade. Some things are settled, most things aren't. And the question sits in your head that most people your age share but rarely ask out loud. How much does the average 30-year-old actually make from side hustles in 2026? Not the YouTube success stories. The actual average person your age. You scroll past videos of people claiming $20,000 months from dropshipping. You don't really believe them, but you also don't have a real number to anchor against. So you sit with a vague feeling that everyone your age seems to be doing something on the side, and you're not sure where you fit. The uncertainty itself is part of the problem. If you knew the real number was, say, $20 a month, you'd feel fine. If it was 10,000, you'd know you needed to move. Not knowing means your brain runs a worst-case scenario by default. Today we settled that using real 2025 and early 2026 data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Bankrate, LendingTree, and other primary sources. The numbers for 30-year-olds are particularly interesting because this is the age group where side income peaks for the first time in life. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, side income, psychology, and why 30 is the age where the side hustle gap between people first becomes obvious. If you've ever wondered whether you're behind, ahead, or right on track for your age when it comes to side income, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up giving you some honest perspective on where you really stand. This is the age where the gap between people who built something on the side and people who didn't first becomes visible at scale. To 30-year-olds with the same job title, the same salary, the same education, can be in completely different financial positions because of what one of them did quietly over the last 5 years. That gap is going to widen for the rest of their lives if nothing changes, which is why this conversation matters more at 30 than it does at any other age. Before we get into the numbers, one quick thing. The 30-year-old is right at the front edge of the millennial generation. Millennials, born roughly 1981 through 1996, are currently the highest earning side income cohort in America, which means the data you're about to hear isn't a worst case scenario. It's actually the optimistic version. If you're 30, you're statistically positioned in the strongest age range for side income. Let's start with the headline. According to Bankrate's 2025 survey, around 27% of American adults have any side income, down from 36% the year before. So if you're 30 and have zero side income, statistically you are not behind. You are in the 73% majority. That number doesn't comfort everyone, but it corrects the assumption that everyone your age is hustling. Most aren't. Most have just one income source, like the rest of working America. Now, here's the layer underneath. Of the 30-year-olds who do have side income, the median monthly take is around $200 at Bankrate, $400 at LendingTree. $200 to $400 a month. That's $2,400 to $4,800 a year. Not nothing, but not life-changing either. The brutal stat hiding inside that median, 28% of side hustlers earn between just $1 and $50 a month. Barely enough for a few coffees. Now, the average is much higher than the median. Bankrate reports the average side hustle income in 2025 was $885 per month. LendingTree says $1,215. Two very different numbers from two reputable surveys. Both are accurate. They just measure slightly different populations using slightly different methods. What both agree on is that the gap between average and median is huge. The average is 4 to 6 times the median. That gap tells you the whole story. That gap exists because side income is dominated by a small number of high earners at the top. About 10% of side hustlers make over $1,000 a month. That 10% pulls the average way up. The other 90% of side hustlers are clustered closer to the median, between $50 and $400 a month. So when you ask how much the average 30-year-old makes from side hustles, the honest answer has 3 parts. Part 1. About 73% of 30-year-olds earn nothing outside their job. Part 2. Of the 27% who do, most earn between $50 and $400 a month. Part 3. A small minority, roughly 3% of all 30-year-olds, earn over $1,000 a month. That small group is what pulls every average upward. That's the real picture, not the misleading single number that gets quoted in headlines. And critically, those 3 groups don't differ that much in talent or intelligence. They differ in whether they ever started and what vehicle they picked when they did. The structural choice matters more than the personal characteristics. Now let's get specific to the 30-year-old demographic. Bankrate breaks down side hustle income by generation, and millennials lead. Millennials, which includes most 30-year-olds, average around $1,129 per month among those who have a side hustle. That's the highest of any generation. Gen Z averages 958. Gen X averages 751. Boomers average 561. So if you're 30 with a side hustle pulling in around 800 to 1,000 a month, you're slightly below the millennial average but well above the median. You're in the upper half of side hustlers. That's a real perspective shift for most people. They assume 800 a month is mediocre. Statistically, it's actually quite good for a 30-year-old with a side hustle. And if you're at the very upper end of the millennial range, pulling in 2,000 a month or more from side income at 30, you're already in the top few percent of your age group. That's worth knowing too. There's also a gender pattern worth flagging. Bankrate found men with side hustles average around $1,195 a month. Women average $611. That's nearly a 2-to-1 ratio. Not because women are less capable, because the side hustles that get marketed to women tend to have, worse unit economics than the ones marketed to men. Selling on Etsy, multi-level marketing, content creation. These get heavily marketed to women but have brutally tight unit economics. Meanwhile, freelance trades, IT consulting, weekend contract work, all of which scale better, get marketed more to men. So if you're a 30-year-old woman, comparing yourself to the overall average, you're comparing to a number heavily weighted by men. Adjust the comparison and the picture changes. The first $1,000 happens way faster when you pick the right vehicle, not when you try harder at the wrong one. That single insight, picking the right vehicle, separates the people who eventually cross the median from the people who never do. And the vehicle question is where the gender gap mostly comes from. Same effort, same skill, different unit economics on what gets chosen. The market rewards some categories far better than others, regardless of who's doing the work. That's something to sit with. If you're a 30-year-old just starting to think about side income, the vehicle matters, at least as much as the effort. Maybe more, the Bureau of Labor Statistics tracks something slightly different. Multiple job holders, meaning people working 2 or more separate jobs. In November 2025, BLS recorded 9.3 million Americans with multiple jobs. The highest number ever recorded since they started tracking it in 1994. 5.7% of the entire workforce. The highest share in 25 years. The trend is, clearly accelerating, not slowing. For people in their prime working years, which includes 30-year-olds, the multiple job holder rate is around 5.2%. So roughly 1 in 20 30-year-olds works a literal second job. The rest, if they have side income, are doing freelance work, gig economy, or building small businesses on the side. Let's talk about what 30-year-olds are actually doing for side income. The categories matter because the math is completely different across them. According to LendingTree's 2025 survey, the most common side hustles are delivering food or groceries at 15%, online freelancing at 15%, and part-time or seasonal work at 14%. Those 3 categories have totally different economics. Delivery driving caps out at maybe $20 an hour after expenses, and your car loses value with every shift. Online freelancing has a wide range from $10 an hour to over $100 depending on skill. Seasonal work is usually minimum wage plus a slight bump. The 30-year-olds making the highest side income are almost never delivery drivers. They're online freelancers, consultants, or running small, specialized businesses. The math for those categories scales. Delivery driving does not. This is critical for context. The $1,100 monthly millennial average is heavily driven by freelancers and consultants, not delivery drivers. If you're a delivery driver pulling in $500 a month, you are not actually behind the average. You're working a fundamentally different vehicle than the people pulling the average up. The vehicle you choose matters more than the hours you put in. A 30-year-old freelancer working 5 hours a week can out-earn a 30-year-old delivery driver working 20 hours a week. Same person, same effort level, different vehicle. That's the entire game. Let me give you a concrete picture. Imagine 2 30-year-olds, both spending Saturday mornings on side work. Person A drives for delivery, makes about $300 a month. Person B does occasional freelance writing in their professional field, makes about $1,000 a month. After 3 years, person A has earned around $11,000, person B has earned around $36,000, and person B's hourly rate keeps climbing as their skills sharpen and their portfolio grows. Person A's rate is, capped by the platform forever. The difference isn't talent. It isn't even effort. It's vehicle selection. And the vehicle you pick at 30 determines a lot of what you can earn for the next decade. Now let's talk about why 30 is such an interesting age for this specifically. A 30-year-old in 2026 has a unique combination of factors: enough work experience to have real skills, enough technical fluency to monetize them online, not yet locked into the financial and family obligations that slow people down in their 40s and 50s. This is the moment when side income is most accessible and most beneficial. The window is open wider at 30 than at any other age. You're old enough to know what you're good at, young enough to still have time and energy outside your main job, connected enough digitally to find customers without needing to know anyone in person. That combination doesn't last forever. By 40, family obligations usually compete harder for time. By 50, energy levels make late night building harder. 30 is, the structural sweet spot for this whole game. Statistically, this is also why millennials currently lead in side income. They sit in this sweet spot collectively right now. Gen Z is just behind them, but still building skills. Gen X has the experience, but less time. Boomers have neither time nor digital fluency at scale. But here's the part most people completely miss, and it might be the most important point in this entire video. The average is the wrong number to anchor on. Completely. When you ask how much the average 30-year-old makes from side hustles, you're asking the wrong question for your situation. Because the average is shaped by a small group of high earners with structurally different lives than yours. The 30-year-old running a 6-figure consulting practice on weekends pulls the average up dramatically. So does the one who built a software side project that sells while they sleep. A handful of these high earners in the data create the illusion that a typical 30-year-old makes $1,100 a month from side income. The reality is most 30-year-olds with side income are nowhere near that. The median, $200 to $400 a month, is the more honest center of gravity. And even that's just a number. What matters isn't where the average sits. It's what the distribution tells you about the structure of opportunity at your specific starting point. The distribution at 30 looks something like this. About 73% earn zero. About 15% earn between $100 and $200 a month. About 8% earn between $2 and $1,000. About 4% earned over $1,000. Where you fit in that distribution tells you which gap is actually relevant to close next. Average tells you nothing useful for your specific situation. If you earn zero, your next gap is $250 a month. That gap is small. You can close it with almost any modest side activity. If you earn 50 to 200, your next gap is to 500. That requires picking a better vehicle, not just doing more of the same. If you earn 500 to 1,000, your next gap is to 2,000. That requires productizing what you do and attracting repeat customers. This is where the structural shift happens from transaction to system. The 30-year-olds who cross this gap become the ones who pull the millennial average upward for everyone else. Each gap requires different moves. The mistake almost everyone makes is trying to skip 3 gaps at once. That almost never works. The other mistake is staying at one gap level too long because the dollar amount feels okay. $200 a month is fine, but it's not where you want to be 5 years from now. Pick the next gap deliberately, not by default. Look, here's the honest truth. Nobody on YouTube wants to say the average 30-year-old earns very little outside their job. The median is a couple $100 a month. The most common amount is exactly zero. You're not behind for not having mastered this. Your average, most people are, but average is just where things sit right now. The question is, which gap is actually achievable from where you stand? And the answer is almost always the next one, not 3 gaps out. At 30, the door's wide open. You have skill, energy, technical fluency, and the longest possible runway of any age group with a real shot at building serious side income. That window doesn't stay this open forever. The math doesn't care about your feelings about being 30 and not having figured this out yet. The math wants to know your starting point and your direction. You're not failing if you're at zero. The system isn't built to push you out of that state. It actually benefits from you staying there because you're a better customer when you're financially captive. The financial industry sells you products that work best when you have one source of income. Banks, insurance companies, brokerages, they optimize for the captive customer. Knowing the structure exists is the first step in stepping outside it. And 30 is, frankly, the best age to start that step. Your future self, the one at 40, looking back at decisions you made now, is counting on what you do this year. Trust me. They'll thank you for picking the right gap to close first and ignoring the misleading average everyone else is anchoring on.